Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. This story begins 21 years ago, but the revenge part was pure serendipity that started 2 years back. I'll shorten some parts because it's a wild ride, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I learned a ton on this journey, and part of why I'm writing this is to share that knowledge with others. The beginning. In 2002, when I had just finished middle school and my sister was still in elementary, my dad met his third wife, Donna, at the only gas station in our town. They quickly moved in together, and my dad abandoned us in our basement apartment to live on a rundown houseboat that didn't even work. He'd show up every other week and toss me $60 for groceries. Eventually, someone figured out what was going on and called my mom. We went to live with her, which was, believe it or not, even worse. My dad and Donna got married in 2003, not long after she called me with some news. "Listen, sweetie," Donna said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Your dad's brain tumor has come back. He can't handle the stress of being around you kids anymore. The only people he can bear to be around are me and my son, Jake." When I called my dad to ask if this was true, he sounded confused. "What? No, that's not true at all. I can't believe Donna would say something like that." That was one of our last conversations until 2 years ago. The middle? There's not much to this part. I worked my way through college, sometimes living in my car. My dad and I weren't in contact, but I heard from family that he'd bought a house and put his son, Jake, through some vocational classes. When my grandmother died, Donna and Jake showed up in a truck and took all the furniture and anything else that wasn't nailed down or already gone. Eventually, I cut off contact with my dad's side of the family. I struggled for years, decades really, but I made it. Now I have a great job and a good family. The best revenge is living well, right? The pre-end warm-up. 2 years ago, October 2021, I got a call from my dad's brother, Uncle Bill. "Hey, it's your Uncle Bill," he said, sounding worried. "Your dad's in a nursing home in another state. You need to go see him. He needs your help. Jake's ghosted him." I couldn't help but laugh at that last part. The nursing home, coincidentally, was about 20 minutes from my house. I saw an opportunity and I took it. The reunion was underwhelming. I didn't want to make amends, but I did want to hear how he ended up dumped and alone in another state. And boy, was it a story. Donna had gotten lung cancer and put my dad in a nursing home before she died in 2019. She suffered, and I was happy to hear it, though I wished it had been a more embarrassing form of cancer. Jake became his power of attorney, POA, when she died and had been visiting my dad, living in my dad's house with his 2 kids, and taking care of my dad's affairs since his mom died. But now he was MIA, and my dad was worried about him. That's all he cared about. He never even asked how I'd been. I agreed to go check on things, mostly out of morbid curiosity. I'd never even been to my dad's house. I wanted to see where he lived with his real family for 20 years. It was a complete disaster. The grass was overgrown, hiding the front door. 3 pickup trucks in the yard were full of trash. My dad's handicapped modified SUV was on 4 flat tires, also full of garbage. I didn't have a key, so I just walked around. Through the windows, I could see the inside was a hoarder's paradise. The doors were plastered with condemnation notices from the city. The carport was stacked with rotting boxes. The yard was a landfill of broken Christmas ornaments, shoes, and rusty tools. There was a letter in the mailbox saying mail delivery had stopped because the house was abandoned. That night, I researched everything I could about powers of attorney and how to use them. I went back the next day and showed my bedridden dad the pictures on my phone. "I'm gonna beat Jake's ass," he growled, then asked me to help more. I laid out my terms. "I'll help, but you have to sign over power of attorney to me. All of it, financial and medical. If you don't, you're on your own." He agreed, so I found a lawyer who'd drive to the nursing home and do the paperwork. That lawyer was a godsend, putting together an ironclad POA full of things I didn't even know I'd need. He also filed to revoke Jake's POA. Now I was unstoppable. We're from a small, rural town where everybody knows everybody, even if you don't realize it. It's suffocating, but it can also be helpful. The beginning of the end. I hit the ground running the next morning. I didn't know how scorched the earth would be when I finished, and I didn't want Jake or his inbred family trying to find me, so I made sure nothing I did had my name on it. I set up a Google account and number for my dad, got him a P.O. box, and put in a mail forwarding notice. I pulled his credit report and went to his small-town bank with the POA. I changed his account addresses, got new account numbers, and requested transaction records going back to when Donna died. The next day, I spent hours at the main branch going through the records. I cornered a service rep for a crash course in his finances. That's when I discovered the extent of Jake's stupidity. My dad got about $6,000 a month in disability and Social Security. Twice a week, Jake was going into a branch and withdrawing all the cash, for 15 months. Each time, as the POA, he had to sign a notarized form stating he was acting on my dad's behalf. Then I went to the house and called a locksmith. When he got the first door open, the stench hit us like a wall. We both gagged. After he finished, I was so embarrassed by what he had to see and smell, I gave him an $80 tip. With new keys in hand, I called the cops. "I'm the POA for my dad," I explained. "I'm checking on his house, and there are 3 vehicles here that don't belong to him. I want them towed." The officer said he'd meet the tow trucks there. When they arrived, the driver asked for a signature. I only signed my first name. "Do you know Jake?" he asked. Running on pure hatred, I surprised myself. "Do you?" He nodded. "Yeah, he's an a-hole." "He might be," I replied. "Hey, can you do me a favor? If you see him, tell him Sarah is coming for him." His bravado evaporated. He knows a crazy idiot when he sees one. They towed the trucks. When everyone was gone, I peeked inside through the carport door. In the fading light, I could hear the faint sounds of roaches and rats scurrying about. I could smell the stench in my hair. Sitting on the carport steps, watching the sun set, I was livid. Just 72 hours to unravel 2 decades, and here I was, stinking and listening to vermin, cleaning up everyone else's mess. Taking time away from my family, and for what? I had to make a choice. Bow out now or double down. And here's the thing. I'm tenacious to a fault. I had to be to survive, and this was a bone I couldn't let go. The thought of Jake's life being upended, his only source of income vanishing overnight, and my dad hearing secondhand from me that he's broke and alone made me giddy. I wanted them both to lose what little they had left, so I decided to triple down. That night, I researched how to get a restraining order. It was surprisingly easy. I went to the courthouse in my hometown and told the clerk I needed a restraining order. I filled out the form at a rickety table right there. The clerk took the form and said, "I'll see if the judge is still here." That kind of scared me. As I waited in his chambers, I noticed certificates from various veterans groups on the wall. I thought, fish in a barrel. The judge asked about my dad's time in the Marines and the DoD logo on my sweater. I'm a contractor. He read my form and granted the temporary order. I'd have to come back for the permanent one, where Jake could argue against it. Then I went home and researched biohazard companies and elder abuse laws in my state. I hired a biohazard company to clean out the house for $9,000. I would have paid triple. They found my dad's mummified dog under pizza boxes in the master bedroom. They sent me pictures and salvaged some papers. Jake was served during this time and a hearing was set. I got to work collecting and documenting everything. I made pictures, spreadsheets, and timelines with cross-references because now they had my full attention. In my spare time, I visited the nursing home and gave my dad 8x10 copies of his dead dog, from every angle. Before court, I went to the police station to report elder abuse. A white-collar detective told me it was a domestic matter, and since Jake had been POA, everything he'd done was legal. That's when I got to educate a small-town detective about the fiduciary responsibilities of a POA. I handed him a highlighted copy of the relevant statutes, then a thick folder with bank statements, pictures of the hoarded house and dead dog, my dad's credit report showing massive debt, and a spreadsheet of every cash withdrawal totaling over $160,000. That's not including the lost value of the house or the credit cards he opened and maxed out. "I'll wait for a case number," I said, sitting down. He came back 30 minutes later, apologized, and gave me a case number. Then I headed to the courthouse. This is the end. I had to wait my turn in court. While waiting, Jake shuffled in, alone and visibly dirty. His untied shoes made me snicker. When it was our turn, we stood up. The judge asked us both some questions, then asked if I had any proof. I had a very thick folder of it. He asked if I'd gone to the police. "Yes, sir, I have," I replied confidently. "Do you have a case number?" As a matter of fact, I do. The order was granted, permanently and for life, but not before the judge halted proceedings and told Jake he needed a lawyer. Someone told me the courthouse would have a copy of my dad's DD 214 discharge papers, so I got those while I was there. I also used my POA to take Donna off the house deed. That way, if my dad died and it went into probate, Jake had no immediate claim. I also got copies of my dad's birth certificate and Donna's death certificate. The clerk who helped me recognized my dad's name and told me she lost her virginity to my Uncle Bill in the 80s. Small towns, right? Donna left my dad $60,000 in life insurance. About $40,000 was left since Jake was spending my dad's money, not his mom's. So I opened an online savings account and transferred every penny. Then I set up recurring transfers for the monthly deposits. There was never more than $100 in his old account. I also found a house flipper who paid enough for the house to clear the mortgage. There's nothing to fight over in probate if there's nothing there. And I made sure there was nothing there. My dad died thinking he still owned a house. This is when I found my dad's life insurance policies. They were up to date, with Donna as the beneficiary. My POA didn't let me change beneficiaries, but it allowed me to assign them. Since Donna was dead, there was technically no beneficiary. This is where the death certificates came in handy. I assigned my sister and me as irrevocable beneficiaries. I kept my dad in the dark about all this. The only things he knew about were the restraining order and his dead dog. I found out he'd bought a gravesite next to Donna and wanted to be buried there. That was never going to happen. I discovered he qualified for burial in a national cemetery as a disabled Vietnam-era veteran, so I arranged for that instead. All the cherries on top. My dad died in June this year, and I was there. He's buried in a national cemetery far away where no one will ever visit. The only obituary I ran was on the funeral home's website, and that was just for insurance purposes. I wrote it as vaguely as possible. There was no service. His urn is bright pink, the color he hated most. In August, I got a call from the prosecutor's office in my hometown. The woman on the other end is married to my first cousin, because of course she is. Jake was arrested just after midnight on July 1st, was still in jail, and had been arraigned on felony elder abuse charges. He's facing 15 years in prison. She told me not to expect the trial anytime soon, as it could take up to 3 years. That's perfect, I told her. The uncertainty will hopefully haunt him, and after all that, he's still got prison to look forward to. He lost his kids. He lost his dad. I'm spending his mom's cancer money. He lost his free house and trucks. He has no credit and will never be able to get any sort of decent job or find a good place to live. And I sleep like a baby. The next one is an entitled People's Story. Let me tell you about the time I almost lost my cool over a silly barbecue. It all started last summer when I moved into my new house. I'd saved up for years to buy this place, and I was thrilled to finally have a backyard of my own. The first thing I did was set up a nice grill on the patio. I couldn't wait to have my friends over for some burgers and beers. Everything was great for the first few weeks. I'd fire up the grill a couple times a week, enjoying the smell of charcoal and sizzling meat. My neighbors seemed cool with it. A few even complimented my cooking skills. But then, one Saturday afternoon, as I was getting ready for a big cookout, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find a middle-aged woman with a stern look on her face. She introduced herself as Karen, the president of the local homeowners association. I'd heard about homeowner associations before, but I didn't think we had one in our neighborhood. "I'm here about your barbecue grill," Karen said, her lips pursed in disapproval. "We've received complaints about the smoke and odor. I'm afraid you'll need to remove it immediately." I was stunned. "Excuse me? This is my property. I can have a grill if I want to." Karen shook her head. "I'm sorry, but the homeowner association bylaws clearly state that outdoor cooking appliances are not allowed. You'll need to take it down or face fines." Now, I was getting irritated. "Look, I never agreed to join any homeowner association. You don't have any authority over my property." "All homes in this neighborhood are part of the homeowner association," Karen insisted. "It's automatic when you purchase a house here. Now, I expect that grill to be gone by Monday, or we'll be forced to take action." Before I could argue further, she turned and marched off my porch. I stood there fuming. Who did this lady think she was? There was no way I was getting rid of my grill without a fight. The next day, I did some digging. I talked to a few neighbors and looked over my mortgage documents. Turns out Karen was full of it. Our street wasn't part of any homeowner association. It was just the next subdivision over that had one. This so-called homeowner association had no jurisdiction whatsoever on my property. Armed with this knowledge, I decided to go all out for my cookout that afternoon. I invited extra friends, bought more food, and kept that grill smoking all day long. Part of me hoped Karen would show up so I could tell her off. Sure enough, around 4 p.m., I spotted her marching up my driveway with a few other people in tow. I met them at the edge of my yard. "I thought I told you to remove that grill," Karen snapped. "You're in violation of homeowner association rules." I smiled sweetly. "Actually, Karen, I've done some research. This street isn't part of your homeowner association. You have no authority here whatsoever." Karen's face turned red. "That's ridiculous. Of course this is homeowner association property." "Nope," I said, pulling out some paperwork I'd printed. "Here's a map of the homeowner association boundaries. Our street is clearly outside of it. And here's a copy of my deed. No mention of any homeowner association membership." Karen snatched the papers from my hand, scanning them frantically. Her little gang of busybodies started whispering among themselves. This "This must be a mistake," Karen sputtered. "No mistake," I replied firmly. "Now, you're trespassing on my property. I suggest you leave before I call the police." Karen looked like she wanted to argue more, but one of her friends tugged her arm. "Come on, Karen, he's right. We should go." With a final glare in my direction, Karen stomped off with her posse. I watched them go, feeling pretty darn satisfied with myself. But it wasn't over. The next week, I got a letter in the mail from the homeowner association demanding I pay a $500 fine for my unapproved barbecue installation. I knew it was bogus, but it still made my blood boil. This Karen lady clearly wasn't going to give up easily. I decided it was time to fight fire with fire. I contacted a lawyer friend of mine and explained the situation. He agreed to help me out pro bono, saying he'd dealt with power-tripping homeowner associations before. We sent a strongly worded cease and desist letter to Karen and the homeowner association board. It laid out in clear terms that they had no legal authority over my property, and that any further harassment would result in legal action for trespassing and attempted extortion. For good measure, we also sent copies to all my neighbors, letting them know about the homeowner association's fraudulent attempts to exert control. A lot of folks were pretty upset when they realized they'd been intimidated into following rules that didn't actually apply to them. The response was faster than I expected. Within days, I got a terse letter from the homeowner association's lawyer, acknowledging their mistake about the neighborhood boundaries. They rescinded the fine and promised not to bother me again. But I wasn't done yet. I organized a big neighborhood barbecue, inviting everyone on my street. As we all enjoyed burgers and hot dogs, I filled them in on what had happened. Many of my neighbors had similar stories about Karen and her cronies trying to boss them around. Together, we decided to form our own little anti-homeowner association alliance. We made it clear that Karen and her pals weren't welcome on our street unless invited. And we all agreed to watch out for each other in case the homeowner association tried any more dirty tricks. The best part? We now have a monthly neighborhood cookout, rotating between different houses. It's become a great way for all of us to socialize and bond, and you can bet those grills are fired up and smoking every single time. As for Karen, I still see her occasionally, glaring at us from the edge of the homeowner association territory, but she doesn't dare set foot on our street anymore. I make sure to give her a friendly wave and gesture towards my grill whenever I spot her. In the end, her attempted power grab backfired completely. Instead of controlling us, she brought our neighborhood closer together, and I got to keep my beloved barbecue, which now feels like a symbol of our freedom from homeowner association tyranny. So if there's a moral to this story, I guess it's this: know your rights, stand up to bullies, and never underestimate the power of a good cookout to bring people together. Oh, and always keep your grill ready. You never know when you might need to smoke out some nosy neighbors. The next one is a petty revenge story. I went to a classic car show on a hot summer day a few weeks ago, 1964 Herald if you're interested, and had various items, tools in my pockets, as I had to do a bit of a rebuild when I got there, important for later. I was standing in a queue for the portaloos, behind a man who had left a large gap between him and the person in front. I was looking at my phone rather than watching what I was doing and stepped forward to within about 2 feet of him. He deliberately stepped backwards into me with an aggressive duck off out of my personal space, making me drop my phone. I wasn't in his bubble and he wouldn't even acknowledge that he'd damaged my phone. He then proceeded to glare at me whenever I moved. When he got to the toilet, he shut and locked the door. I took the opportunity to pull a thick tie wrap, zip tie, out of my pocket and lock the door where a padlock can be fitted. He was still there, shouting and kicking, when I went back that way for a cup of tea over an hour later. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I have always hated mowing the lawn. At the same time, I don't want to be that neighbor, so I do my best to stay on top of the lawn. However, while I started out strong this summer, I had a series of medical issues that left me in a state that mowing was a bit too much than I could handle. Add in a few other excuses on the few remaining times I could mow, the lawn was making me look like I was the neighbor I didn't want to be. I decided I'd pay someone to mow for a change and then pick it back up once it was back under control. My first mistake was when the company I contacted had advertised a one-time cut, but when calling to schedule service, notified me they have a 3-cut minimum. I should have backed out then. I didn't. The first mower showed up and canceled the mowing, claiming my lawn was 100% over 23 inches and as such for excessive height, and proceeded to list that they'd charge me a 500% markup for the service. The photos taken were of the few higher points in the lawn, all my front yard, with a tape measure you couldn't read the numbers off of. I was annoyed to say the least, and I tried to originally cancel here but hit with the whole contract bit. So I told them I'd mow it and I'd just use them to end the season and take it easy. I actually only mowed the front lawn, and even then, not the whole lawn. Miraculously, 2 weeks later, the mower that showed up did the whole lawn and somehow didn't see the backyard that I left untouched. Was a problem. The next mowing day came and went and no one showed, so I reported it and canceled the mowing through the app. Despite canceling, someone showed up the following day. I'm annoyed and I want out, so I go into the app and try to cancel my service again. It looks like the service was canceled and I saved screenshots. Then today I get a message saying my mower is on the way. Here's the thing. We have had a drought for the last month or so. It's the end of the season and my lawn hasn't grown even a half inch in the last 2 weeks. I am beyond furious at this point. I wait until the guy shows up, I talk to him, he's a great guy, he's a contractor for this booking company, which is what I thought was the case. He tells me he gets this all the time, he lets me know he's going to send a message to the company. I felt bad as time got wasted, but there wasn't much I could do about that. An hour later, I get a message showing I'm rescheduled for tomorrow. I'm done. So I call them up, and after speaking with one agent, I get to the escalation team. He tells me my service is canceled, but I still have one mowing as per the contract. We go back and forth for a bit, and he won't budge. I ask him if he would schedule snow removal in the middle of summer, so why should I schedule mowing when it isn't needed? Nothing. Fine. Schedule me for June in 2047. June when, sir? June 4th, 2047. I'm sure I'll need my lawn mowed then. We can't schedule that far in advance. He's insistent it has to be this or next year, but I keep pushing, and I remind him that I agreed to a 3-cut minimum, and nowhere in any of the conversations did the company specific a restriction on when. So I wanted to schedule it on June 4th, 2047, and he needed to schedule it happen. One moment, sir, while I talk to support. I wait for another few minutes and then he comes back. Your service is fully canceled, no one is coming out. Thank you for watching, I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.